I think I need to just sort of set the scene before I start. There's a lot of information all over the place about FN-FAL/R1s. So I'm not going to talk about the development history of the gun. I'm not going to talk about the technical side of exactly how the thing works. That's all stuff you can easily find on the internet and study and that kind of thing. What I thought of doing in terms of adding value and linking up with the fact that it's a show and tell is to focus more on the different variations and a couple of rifles with a few unique characteristics, um, which is not the kind of stuff you can really compare if you unless you have all of them together. Okay. So I've got slides. The slides was a combination compiled between either myself and Rian. Rian unfortunately had to be somewhere else today, so I'm standing in. So if I'm flopping around a bit, it's because I wasn't initially supposed to talk, and it's not my field of expertise. All right, so without any further ado, let's carry on. Okay, so just to set the scene, I think the FAL/R1 in Southern Africa is iconic, and I by no means is the first guy to do any research on it. I won't be the last guy, and I'd like to acknowledge the guys who started it. And I think the guy who initiated the whole interest in this series of rifles was Peter Wells. I think everybody knows Peter. He did the pioneering research, and he wrote the first article that I'm aware of on the FAL specifically in South Africa. Then I'd like to acknowledge Andrew Suter from Classic Arms for the simple reason that Andrew allowed me, when they imported all the FALs from Zimbabwe, Andrew allowed me to go and spend, I think it was about 4 or 5 days in his gun safe. And I literally sat on my backside surrounded by FALs, and I worked through them to try and do exactly what you see here and identify all the variations. And by the way, this is not a complete collection, just by the way. And just for contributors for today, is Rian, who initiated this whole talk. Robert, who kindly brought his ANC marked parafel for us to see. And then I'd like to acknowledge Etienne Maritz, who helped me to save the Portuguese FAL, which is this guy. I'm not going to go into the history of that thing, but I bought that firearm probably 15 years ago. And we had a huge battle with the paperwork, which eventually Etienne was the one guy who could, I think, see the value of preserving the firearm, assisted me to sort out the paperwork issues, and it's license pending. So thank you, Etienne. Okay. Yeah. So this is just an idea of what it looked like in Andrew's gun safe when he brought the stuff from Zim. I must tell you, I was in heaven, sitting on a cold concrete floor with heaps and heaps and heaps and heaps of FALs to work through. These are the ones that I looked at. You'll see that the firearms in the shelves there are also FALs. So there were a lot of them. Okay. Right. So the FALs were used in South Africa primarily. I'm talking sub-Saharan Southern Africa. Primarily used South Africa, Rhodesia, and Mozambique. So we'll start off with South Africa. Okay. All right. So the first rifles that I brought is the AR-10 and the G3, which were rifles that were used in the competitive trials in the late 50s, when they had to decide what are they going to replace the 303s with. This particular AR-10 is a Sudanese configuration. the trials happened before the Portuguese configuration was ordered and built.
Knowles,
Yep.
can I request that you just lift the firearm and just
Yeah, I
show
will.
it? Okay.
I will. Okay. So what identifies it as Sudanese is, first of all, the shape of the handguard. Secondly, the position of the fire selector, which, okay, it's not going to do it now because it's, but the fire position is actually down. So what happened was when they dragged it, the safe position is down. So when they dragged it across the ground, this thing went into the fire position, which the Portuguese regarded as unsafe, and that's one of the changes that they made on the Portuguese contract rifles. Okay, the G3, you guys can come and have a look at it. It's just a G3. Okay. So the outcome of the trials was that the AR-10, by the way, by this time, the AR-10 had a heavier gauge barrel. The very first AR-10 barrels burst, and they replaced them with a thicker barrel, which this thing has. Technically, from what I understand, this performed the best, but it was the most expensive. Believe it or not, it was more expensive than the Swiss gun as well. And it only lost out because the Dutch company who were manufacturing it would not allow license manufacture. The FAL came second from a performance perspective, and FN was prepared to give us a manufacturing license locally. So that's why the FAL was chosen. Okay. All right. So the first South African contract FALs were these guys. The first one, this is actually the second configuration. They easily recognized by the crest. The very first ones didn't have flash hiders on them. The second configuration had the flash hider on it. Type 1 receiver, early manufacture. Okay, so this is what that looked like. And then I think most people know about the heavy barrel, which is this guy, which was bought originally to be used as a squad automatic, wasn't very successful in that role. Interestingly enough, they were all built on Type 2 receivers with a strengthening notch. And when I originally got this thing, it's marked FAL. So I thought, whoa, this is a parts bin gun. But all the heavy barrels, none of them were marked FALO. They were all marked FAL. And it is numbers matching. So, okay. What else have I got there? Oh, okay, come on. Next slide.
It's the continuation of that. 2 slides it was.
Okay. Go to the next one. Okay. Yeah. So the other FN manufactured South African contract rifle was the South African version of the Parafel. They were all, none of them were built in South Africa. They were all built in by FN on Type 2 receivers. But the South Africans insisted they wanted the normal infantry rifle sight, which meant they had to change this geometry, and the sling swivel had to move from the top down to the bottom. And that's how you can recognize the South African contract. So they did not have any crests or anything on them. And they had the standard length barrel, etc., without the grenade sight. If you compare that with this guy, this is the normal, can I call it normal? FN-FAL with the normal flip sight and the sling swivel sitting at the top. So those were the main differences between the two. Okay. Come back to this guy just now. Yeah, this just points to the differences that I've discussed now. Okay. All right, so the guy started industrializing the FAL in South Africa. That's the very first rifle that was given to Verwoerd. That's actually in the museum here, serial number 1. And the interesting thing, if you go to the next slide. Okay, that's slightly out of sequence. There were basically three main receiver types, the 1, 2, and 3. The type 1 didn't have, the important thing there is it didn't have the strengthening rib. And all R1s, South African manufactured R1s, were on type 1 receivers. Type 2 receivers, like I've shown here on the heavy barrel. And then the type 3, which I've got an example up here, is the last configuration. And it's they didn't have any of the lightning cuts, so it was a more streamlined manufacture. These things were, as I said, smooth. There was no material removed. They left it as it is. I must be honest, I've not weighed them, but I doubt about the practical benefits of these lightning cuts, other than increasing the manufacturing costs. Okay. Yeah. So this is if you want to compare a FAL with the R1, the R1s, there were 2 types of R1, but all the R1s type 1 receivers without the strengthening rib, and you will see the shape of these lightning cuts at the mag goes in is different. And on the R1, look here. When you come and have a look, you'll see it's very roughly machined in here, where the FN is nice and smooth. And then there were 2. We can actually go to the next slide. There were two configurations of R1. The early ones had the wooden butts, like the FNs had, the Belgian FNs, and then they later changed to the plastic butts. Yeah, they all had the sorry, just go back. They all had the 22 mm flash hiders, and the Zulu grenade sight, which is actually a South African design, later incorporated in the Belgian manufactured guns as well. Excuse me. And they had the R1762 markings with the serial number. And then they were, I'll have to see, I have one here. Here it is. There were R1s. Like, it's a bit difficult. Can you see with the camera? Okay. It's a stock standard R1, but you'll see there's no markings on it other than the serial number. So they were manufactured specifically for Rhodesia on a Rhodesian contract to give the politicians plausible deniability. There were two. Can I call it numberless R1s types in Rhodesia? The ones were the sanction busting guns, which were basically R1s, and the R1 markings and that kind of thing were mulled off. You can see where it was mulled off. And then there were these Rhodesian contract rifles, which was just never marked. Okay. Okay. Okay, so the Portuguese FAL, is this guy. They all had the Portuguese test type 1 receivers. They were all manufactured in the 50s, very early manufacture. They all had the barrel without any flash hider and the bayonet lug, and they had the normal gas plug with no grenade sight of any description. Another feature of this gun, which is part of the reason why I spent so much effort trying to save it, is actually this scope mount, which is the very, very early first version of scope mount where the scope is actually packed onto the thing. Flexible straps. Yeah, you don't see many of those. Okay, they were originally. This is a marble scope. I don't know how many of you know that there were marble scopes. It was a company in America that actually specialized in making iron sights, but they made a few scopes in the 70s, early 70s, and that's one of them. But normally they were fitted with these OIP 3.6 power scopes. Okay. Yeah, Congolese FAL. When the Congo was still a Belgian colony, the Congolese army was called the Fourth Republic. They had um, FALs. All their FALs were marked FP for Force Publique. And I think the most famous of those FP marked was the parafels that were called the Congo, and that even today they call the Congo parafels or the Congo FALs. They were basically FALs, standard FALs like this, but with a shortened barrel. And that's how you recognize them. After independence, Force Publique became the Armée Nationale de Congolais, and the FALs that were bought after 61 were marked ANC, which this is one of. And they had the standard length barrel. Okay, what's next? All right, then. Yeah, I think the most iconic FALs and the most iconic use of FALs was in specifically in Rhodesia. I actually skipped over something very important. I wanted to show you guys. Where's this thing now? This gun. This is a South African manufactured R1. Okay, it's all numbers matching. The exception of the barrel. The barrel doesn't have a number on it, but the barrel actually has LIW acceptance stamps and inspection stamps on it. But what makes this interesting, and I wish I could get my hands on this serial number 1 that's in the museum just to inspect it. But this is proof that the industrialization of the South African manufacture of the R1 happened gradually, because, and I emphasize this thing's numbers matching, okay? But you'll see on the receiver, on the, what's the name? It has the sand cuts, which was never part of the South African manufacture. So it's obviously a FN supplied part that was incorporated in the early production of the R1s. And I would invite you guys to come and have a look at this thing. I bought this gun, I cleaned it, oiled it. It's never going to get restored, for the simple reason, that's where it ties in with Rhodesia. The rifles that went to Rhodesia worked extremely hard. They were used with a capital U. And this, if you look at this condition, this is what those guns look like. They didn't look nice, refurbished. You see, especially in America, guys with their nicely painted Rhodesian FALs, guys, that's what they look like. This is what they look like. Go and look at the original photographs, you'll see. Okay, so the first FAL, the first version of the FAL that was used in Rhodesia was before UDI. Obviously, British supplied SLRs, which unfortunately I do not have one in my collection yet. But inch pattern, so the parts are not compatible with a metric pattern FAL. You'll see they had the sand cuts, they had the long flash hiders, didn't have grenade sights on them, specific shape of the grip, etc., etc. Okay. Yeah. Then typical the typical kind of things you see on an original Rhodesian fell. What I try to illustrate here. First of all, the fact that they were painted, the fact that they were in very used condition. The Rhodesians removed the handles, as they said, troops must carry the thing in the ready position, not by the handle. They removed the sling swivels as well. Two reasons. First of all, they didn't want the guys to sling the thing over the shoulder for in case the poor boy hit the fan. Secondly, there was a story that the sling swivels made noise. And after, Tony, maybe you know, I think it was 77, thereabouts, they converted all the Rhodesian FALs to semi-auto only to try and conserve ammunition. And the interesting statistic is the ammunition consumption went down and the kill rate went up. Okay. Okay, so this was an important historic event. I think most of you know about Ian Smith's book, The Great Betrayal, which is exactly what this was about. Because of South African policy of détente, eventually they forced Smith to let Mugabe and Nkrumah out of jail, and that's where all the fun started. And South Africa imposed sanctions, so that's where all the sanction busting started. And that's why they eventually made the sanitized rifles, etc., etc., etc. If you wanna read real life adventure stories, go and research the sanction busting that happened on behalf of Rhodesia, especially Jack Melach with his airplanes, supposedly flying export beef out of Rhodesia and bringing empty aircraft back, which weren't that empty. Okay. All right. So just to give you an idea, guys, there is no such thing as a typical Rhodesian FAL. It doesn't exist. The roadies used what they could get, whatever they could get. They used them to destruction. They were rebuilt with parts all over the place. So it's literally a case of anything goes. And I'm not saying this flippantly, but you know, you get a lot of stories about this is a typical, this is a Rhodesian FAL. There is no such thing. Any possible variation was used. And that's what I'm trying to illustrate with all of this. These are some of the variations that I identified when I went through and inspected these rifles. I don't think I'm going to go through all of them. The only other rifle, to give you an idea, this is the G-marked rifle. So this is an FN manufactured civilian rifle. It was manufactured by FN for the civilian market, semi-auto only. They were also used in Rhodesia. This particular rifle I bought from the guy who used it and brought it out of Rhodesia. I bought it from his wife after he passed away. So the provenance of this thing is known, and you'll see. While this is fairly standard, they were allowed to do a lot of, call it individual customization. For argument's sake, I mean, this is not standard, but the guys were allowed to do that if they wanted to. Okay. All right. The Imbel story. We the first Imbels I saw during the inspection at Classic Arms. All of the ones that I saw was black. None of them had any camo paint on them. Although there is a collector, I haven't personally seen the rifle, but he says he has the Imbel that's got paint on it. There's two stories. First, that they were brought in right at the end of the war, and there's a big debate whether they were ever deployed or not. And the second story says they were bought just after independence, after 1980, from Imbel. And this is one. that came out of them. You can see the numbers have been modified. It's type 3 receiver. It's identical to the last configuration of FAL manufactured by FN. It's 100% identical, and the parts are interchangeable. But I thought I'll bring the email because I don't think too many people see them in South Africa. Okay. All right. So what I also did was, especially the Bush War in Rhodesia had a huge influence on webbing and tactics and that kind of thing. By the way, in Rhodesia, it's not called the Bush War; it's called the Chimurenga War, the second Chimurenga War. So I thought I'll bring some of the kit along as well as a sort of a sideshow and to chat about. So I want to start, before I get to those guys, with this. This is the normal style of webbing that we know from the SADF. You can imagine, we all know the Rhodesian Fire Force tactics, etc., which was effectively a quick reaction force. So you can imagine having to struggle to get this on your body in a hurry, as opposed to a battle jacket, sorry, like this, which you literally just threw on. And that's part of the reason why these things were developed. It's interesting that the layout of the pockets, etc., mimics was the standard webbing. You can see it's got the bags on the back, etc. It's nicely padded. I think it would have been fairly hot, but okay, at least you can get it on you. Then South Africans followed suit, and I actually bought this as a Rhodesian jacket, but I don't think it is. From what my research tells me, this is the very first iteration of South African battle jackets. This was replaced by the famous Niemöller kit. This thing, it's very well made, nicely stitched, all the good nonsense, but there's no numbers, no manufacturing mark, nothing on it. The only way I identify it as South African is because of the layout. And what's interesting are these toggles, which is basically a copy of the Chinese pattern. Okay, then I think another iconic piece of webbing from the Rhodesian days was the chest webbings. I've got 3 here, which I'll discuss now. This is Faraday manufactured with the single clips, and again, a lot of this stuff was the standardization in Rhodesian kit was a very broad-based term, because guys were allowed to customize to a very large extent. Here's another Rhodesian chest webbing. As you can see, it's got the 2. First of all, it's a double pocket, so you can put 2 mags in here. And it's got the 2 clips. It's also Faraday manufactured. There's the label. And the guy has added a pocket for a handgun. Lastly, the last one is this guy, where this is a copy of the South African, or whatever you want to call these things, little fossil keys. And you can clearly see this was a homemade job. If you look at the quality of the stitching, etc. So this was probably made at a unit workshop somewhere. Okay. The other, yeah, what is next? Okay, we actually spoke about those. Okay. All right, before I get there, I wanted to, and this has actually got nothing to do with the talk for today, but you don't see these very often, so I thought I'd bring them. These were khakis. It was blackened, and you can see the guys molded anti-tracking soles on it. And these, I wear them every now and again simply because they fit my feet. These have a individual Rhodesian provenance. So the guy in the RLI actually wore these. They're extremely comfortable. Something that you don't see that often. Okay, so from the very beginning, guys tried to put improved sights, let's call it that, on the R1 or the FAL. And through the years of collecting, I've got a few versions of rompdeksels with scope mounts on them. All kinds of various forms. You guys can come and have a look. This is the South African manufactured one for the night sight. Just as a matter of interest. This one, if someone can give me more info on this, I would really appreciate it. First of all, I've never seen one other than this one. Secondly, even if I look through it, I don't see any advantage. Anyway, this is interesting. This is actually the British SUIT, Sight Unit Infantry. Why I've got it here is you see quite a few photographs of Rhodesian guys having fitted these to their firearms. It's a fairly unique design in that it's got a tritium post, but it works from the top, so it points down. So once you get used to it, it takes a bit of getting used to it, but once you are used to it, it's actually very, very easy and quick to acquire your sight, and it actually works very well. I use it on my R1 when I shoot at the range, just for the fun of it. The other one that I wanted to show you guys is you see a lot of modern versions of this. These aluminium machined mouse covers, rompdeksels, whatever you want to call them. But this is the actual original one with the ICN. It's a South African ICN number on it. So this is what the originals actually look like. The modern ones, most of them have a Picatinny interface. I'm not going to talk too much about the sniper versions purely because I don't have anything to show you guys other than this is the Carless ZF69 scope that the South Africans used on their R1 snipers, the first generation R1 sniper, first and second generations. It was also used on their Steyr Mannlicher SSG 69 sniper rifles, which is what this is for. Okay. If you look at the sniper box, you'll see there's a nice custom-made cavity for this scope holder. In terms of magazines, the guys made 30-round magazines, which supposedly was used on the heavy barrels. And they were also used on the 7.62 converted Brens. 20 round, which is what everybody knows, and then the 10 round, which was specifically manufactured for the sniper rifles. Okay. The Rhodesians also, now I must find it. They also modified some of the Imperial SLR mags to interface with the metric rifles, and this is actually one of them. The way you recognize it is you'll see the base plate is different. They were modified at the top to fit into the metric guns. Okay. I think that's probably about it. Yeah, those are the mags that we spoke about. Yeah, that's it, guys. Oh yeah,